Towards the end of the 1990s, Sega had focused their efforts on two platforms, their home console, the Dreamcast, as well as their dominance in the arcade market. By this point, arcades were still going strong in the West, with Sega supplying games to family fun centers, movie theaters, and boardwalks across North America. The hardware that their games ran on, the Naomi, was designed similarly to the Dreamcast. The idea was that Sega would be able to make games meant for arcades and easily port them over to the home console. Crazy Taxi and House of the Dead are two big titles that made use of this. Their Dreamcast ports are arcade perfect. Some games, however, never made the jump between arcade and Dreamcast. Towards the end of 2000, Sega were gearing up to launch the Naomi 2, an enhanced variation of the Naomi hardware. They had several games prepared for the Naomi 2, one of which was Wild Riders. Wild Riders was released exclusively to arcades in early 2001, shortly after Sega announced they were ending production on the Dreamcast. The game is a mix of Jet Set Radio's cel-shaded graphics and anti-authoritarian themes, with Crazy Taxi's San Francisco-inspired setting and chaotic gameplay. The goal is simple. You're on the run from the cops and you have to keep up momentum to avoid being arrested. Crashing into obstacles will slow you down, while jumping over or sliding under objects will give you a speed boost. The game screams arcade more than any other Dreamcast-era arcade game. The screen is full to the gills with colorful characters, obstacles, and comic book-style panels meant to distract the player. The look seems to be based on American independent comics of the 90s like Ghost World, almost as a parallel to Jet Set Radio's art style being based on Japanese manga and fashion magazines. A major problem with the game is that it's too short and devoid of much content compared to games like Crazy Taxi. There's one stage that can be cleared in around 10 minutes if the player is good enough. This works in small doses, such as in an arcade setting, but if they were to port this game to home consoles, they would definitely need to beef it up with more stages and optional play modes. Not much has really been said about Wild Riders. While writing the script, I could barely find any information about the game online. It seems that, due to the unbelievably bad timing of the game's release, it's almost been entirely ignored. What happened? For starters, the game was announced towards the end of the Dreamcast's life for hardware that was a step up from that of the Dreamcast. To port a Naomi 2 game to Dreamcast would mean to make compromises with the game's quality. The game also released too early to warrant a port to the next generation of consoles, as the Xbox and GameCube wouldn't be released until late 2002. Not to mention, the developers would have had to greatly expand the amount of content in the game before porting it. It just wasn't worth it at the time. Wild Riders came and went in the months leading up to Sega's transition from hardware manufacturer to games publisher. The frenzy surrounding this undoubtedly lent to the general public missing Wild Riders entirely. Sure, the game was available in arcades, but this was the time when arcades started losing steam as home consoles began surpassing them. The concept behind Wild Riders should have made it a cult classic among Sega fans. It's essentially everything great about the Dreamcast era in one game. It's weird, it's stylish, it's fun. I don't think we'll ever see a sequel. We probably won't even see a re-release. But I'd at least like to see the characters in the next Sega All-Stars crossover game. Any sort of reference to this little game that could would make me happy.